Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. And if you'll kindly silence your cell phones, and Libby would like to hold questions until the end. So we'll let her give her presentation, and then we'll open it up for questions. Thank you. And turn it over to Libby to tell us about the architecture.
Okay.
I think that's the topic for today
Well, among other
of
things.
Philadelphia.
And now I only have 100 or so years to cover, so I really can't. Right, right. It's kind of how it feels. Um, so welcome back, everybody. I'm glad to continue the story up into the 21st century. Once again, here's my mother's map of Center City, and we've covered this historic area down here, and then kind of the middle section with the city hall, and now we're sort of talking about all this stuff out here. Um, and uh, so we've seen how the architecture has blossomed as the city expanded from river to river. Today, we'll look at city planning once City Hall was built, with the creation of the Fairmount Parkway and the architects and planners who guided the transformation of the city, as well as a look at the sesquicentennial, the redevelopment of Society Hill, and two great Philadelphia architects. So, as we learned from Harry Gratwick recently, the industrialized nations began to show off their wares at international expositions, starting with the Crystal Palace in 1851 in London. Then, with the Paris Exposition of 1889, the centennial of the French Revolution, wealthy Philadelphia visitors to Paris saw what Baron Haussmann had done to open up the ancient city with wide boulevards. So, looking here, you can see a lot of them from the Étoile, and in this Pissarro view of the city going to the Opera, great wide boulevards. New buildings were being built in the Beaux-Arts style, with a return to the classical style with lots of white marble, a repudiation of the dark, overwrought buildings of the Victorian era. Uh, and then there was the Columbian Exposition, which opened in Chicago in 1893, so just a few years later than the Paris one. So these expositions are beginning to happen all over, everywhere, and sometimes, and you know, and this one was mainly designed by architect Daniel Burnham. You see here, and it was the first time the concept of the city beautiful movement in the Beaux-Arts style were seen in America. They called it the White City, and it was very much in classical design. See this great domed building there. And So around the time City Hall was planned and Fairmount Park was created in the years after the Civil War, the idea of a grand diagonal boulevard to connect them started. Here is an 1885 proposal, and which was the first of many. It took years, and central players in the early planning were Mayor John Rayburn, architect Albert Kelsey, and Peter A.B. Widener, who had made his fortune, big one, in setting up trolley lines all over the city so workers could get to work. Widener had a fabulous art collection, which was implicitly promised if there was to be a new museum at the end of the parkway. Space in Memorial Hall, which was built for the centennial in 1876, was getting to be very limited. Many plans emerged in the ensuing years, the usual political machinery moving at a snail's pace. And notice that the original name of the parkway was the Fairmount Parkway, but in 1937 they changed it to Benjamin Franklin. Enter Paul Philippe Cray. He came to Philadelphia in 1901, a product of the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. And he taught architecture at the University of Pennsylvania School of Design, then led it for many years. He was hired to design the parkway in 1907. So those whole, you know, like 20, 25 years they've been talking about this. And finally hired somebody to do it. And he planned a grand boulevard in the style of the Champs Elysees, you see here, to be lined with civic and cultural buildings. This is Paul Cray by Adolphe Bory. Anybody know any Borys around here? Uh, and this is Judy's husband's, I don't know, ancestor, whatever. um, and then here's the École des Beaux Arts in the 6th arrondissement of Paris. And and then Cray brought in a French landscape architect named Jacques Rébert to lay out the design and place buildings and greenery. So, and at last, in 1911, with the rare decisiveness of a mayor, John, what's his name, Rayburn, funding was secured and the plan was approved. Demolition proceeded, and by 1915, 1,300 buildings had been raised. So it was this. So look at this view, and this here's City Hall, and then this obviously must have been from an airplane, but here you can see the the part. Well, I guess this is. Uh, I'm trying to think. This is before the museum was built. Yeah. Um, Here's the Great Broad Street Station designed by Frank Furness, which was just right coming through the middle, right into City Hall. Uh, so here's the Parkway going out, and then you have Logan Circle, which started out as Logan Square, and then the site of the PMA out there. And this is Greber's plan. And those of you who heard Mike Krzyzewski speak about the cathedral here a couple weeks ago, this is a proposal for Greber's proposal for an Episcopal cathedral on the site of the present Rodin Museum. Can you imagine? I mean, look at the size of that. It's just immense. So some things work out better, I think. But uh, and and then they changed Logan Square to be a circle, styled after the Place de la Concorde in Paris, which you see here. Uh, and Julian Abel, Philadelphia's first black architect, and architect Horace Trumbauer's chief designer, designed the library on the left. Here's the library building. I'm sorry, this one is copied after this one, so as you can very well tell. And based on the Crillon building in the Hotel de Crillon in Paris. And the fountain sculpture was by Alexander Sterling Calder. Uh, and it's the Three Rivers. Anybody know what the Three Rivers are? No, we're talking Philadelphia, Kathleen. Just Schuylkill, Delaware, and the Wissahickon. Yeah, 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 yeah. So here's what Greber's plan looked like. Um, and so it began. And so the big issue became the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Leading Philadelphia architects, uh, God, what's his name? Clark Zanzinger. Oh, it's right in front of me. Clark Zanzinger and Charles Louis Bory were one firm, and then Trumbauer had a separate firm. And here's Julian Abel, who was the chief designer I mentioned. So he did the basic design of the museum once the concept of the three grand temples was approved. And there was a competition was held, and it on the design. And after several years, in 1907, it was decided to have it on this site at the end of the Parkway, and construction began in 1919, and it opened in 1928. So, sort of huge amount of time. And as I heard somebody say recently, they had just spent a lot of time with wagons full of stone going back and forth, getting paid for it. So by the time the building was completed, Widener had died, and his heirs had given up and sent the art to the National Gallery in Washington, where you can see it today. Eh, And anyway, so that's the art museum. And here, these are all about Abel's drawings. And when I put this talk together, I I had it kind of in a different order, and I realized I was thinking I was going to be doing this lecture last week, and and which would have been April 30th, which was Julian Abel's birthday. So, but so happy birthday a week late. uh, Now, the Rodin Museum was a joint effort between Cray and Grébert, but it was complicated by the fact that Cray went back to France to fight in World War One. So Grébert went ahead with it to Cray's displeasure, but he did return, and they finished their plans, and their gem of a museum and gardens opened also in 1928. It was designed to hold the collection of Rodin's sculptures and drawings of Jules Massebaum, the largest in the world after the one in Paris. It features his Rodin statue of the thinker, who you see here, uh, and then the gates of uh, the Rodin's studio in the town of Meudon outside Paris. And at the entrance, so you would come in here on the plan. Here's the thinker. Here are the gates from Meudon. And then there's this beautiful garden, which you see here. And then the museum itself is here. And right at the entrance, which I don't have a picture of, but it's that black thing, is um, his bas relief of the gates of hell. As you walk into the museum, it's like, okay. um, and then the parkway was basically unchanged until 2012, when the world famous Barnes collection was moved from its original home in Marion, designed by Paul Cray, to a new building between 20th and 21st Streets. And you remember the big fight over it. And finally, it was agreed that if the collection was recreated with every single picture exactly the same the way it was in the museum in Marion, it could happen. So it finally happened, and here it is. And so here's on the plan. Here's the Rodin and the Barnes just beyond it. And So the parkway from its conception was designed by creating green space in the city with many of its cultural institutions along it, such as the art museums, the Franklin Institute, the Academy of Natural Sciences, and the Free Library of Philadelphia. For Mayor John Rayburn, the park and the parkway and the art museum were just the beginning of the transformation of a great city into a greater city, as he said. Rayburn was a man of broad vision. He had served 16 years in the U.S. Congress before returning to Philadelphia as mayor. In 1909, he appointed a committee on comprehensive plans. And then, of course, what with World War I, the Spanish flu, and less committed mayors who gave rise to the description of Philadelphia as corrupt and contented, it took until 1923 for the committee to put forth proposals for many possible city improvements, some of which were motivated by the upcoming sesquicentennial. So they included the municipal stadium, which was built in 1926 for the sesquicentennial, and it's down, where the other stadiums are now, and uh, was part of the sesquicentennial. Uh, I built a new train station at 30th Street, which was and the post office, which were finally done in 1934. The Broad Street station was demolished in 1952, and the Constitution Square uh, in front of Independence Hall is what they called it in the plan. Here you see Independence Hall here, and this is the mall that goes out from it, and that wasn't really completed until the Constitution Center opened in 2003. Uh, this committee ultimately became the City Planning Commission. You'll hear more about that later. Um, Paul Craig continued his architectural practice and his teaching at Penn. In 1924, he recommended tearing down all of City Hall except the tower. Uh, and putting a new municipal building nearby. And so here it would be. It's like, whoa. He designed the Benjamin Franklin Bridge. Here's drawings, beautiful drawings of it, and and the Henry Avenue Bridge. A lot of you know that, I'm sure, uh, over the Wissahickon in 1930, and he became renowned nationwide and abroad for his public buildings and many gorgeous battle monuments. So now let's look a bit at the sesquicentennial, because Cray was the principal architect for it, and in the summer of 1926. So 150 years, right? Uh, no, excuse me, 200 years since 1776. It was held at the end of Broad Street by the Navy Yard, where the stadiums and FDR Park are now. Uh, so here's at the end, they put up this gigantic Liberty Bell at the end of Broad Street. And then here's the plan for it. Here's the stadium, and this is what is now FDR Park. Uh, and then exhibits were all in this area. Um, the it was set in this district where the mayor's political cronies were from. So okay, we'll pause. He's going. He's going. He's going. He's going. Okay. Thank you. And so the fair was basically a bust because the building finished late. It was very commercial, and it rained more than half of the days from June through November that year that it ran, leaving a naturally marshy area even less desirable. So people didn't come, and they did not make money on it, and it ended up in debt. And there was a heavy emphasis on the historical side, as you'll see in the next slide, dominated by wealthy WASP women. Others objected, and one thing that happened on July 12th was the a concert organized by the Women's Committee on Negro Activities, portraying the struggles and achievements of the Negro, featuring a chorus uh, of 400 voices singing spirituals in their original settings. And they included, and among their singers, Marian Anderson. So, so here's a photograph of it. Here's the stadium, and this is some of the displays. And this is what I'm going to show you next, which was Old High Street. And it was the one big success of the fair. A committee of women's committees put together a recreation of the original High Street or Market Street, uh, so Old High Street. And it was intended to provide fairgoers, quote, with a temporary escape from the complexity of modern society. There were no radios, no Charleston dancers, no automobiles, no skyscrapers, no nightclubs, no traffic semaphores. Instead, there were town criers and hostesses in ruffed caps and weekly pageants. Uh, and they had uh, 21 buildings, so 10 on each side of the street, and then the courthouse or the old town hall at the end. And they included the slate roof house, do you remember? George Washington's President's House, the old town hall, Benjamin Franklin's print shop, and a Quaker meeting house. The committee was made up of people who would be in charge of each individual building and would persuade Philadelphia department stores to furnish them and then offer the furnishings up. How did that happen? Eh, eh, eh. That's weird. Okay, sorry. Um, so, uh, Elizabeth Price Martin, who's in this picture, and you can't really tell what she looks like, who was K.O. Brazy's grandmother. Okay. And for those of you who were newer to Cathedral Village, K.O. lived here until, what is it, like 2 years ago, uh, when she died at 103. So, so this was her grandmother. Uh, and she represented the Women's Committee of 1926, so the sesquicentennial, about which we'll hear more later. So this is what they were trying to replicate, thanks to William Birch. So here's a view of High Street. Uh, so with a booming economy in the 1920s, there was a surge of new buildings in Center City, mainly in the Art Deco style, and a rejection of the Beaux-Arts style, but maintaining its symmetry and motifs, more as decoration than structure. And here are just a few examples of it. Suburban Station, the Drake Hotel. It was a hotel to start with, now it's apartments. Uh, and the this bank at just across the street from City Hall is now a hotel, and the Perlman Building right across from the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And so these are all in the Art Deco style, and which was very popular in the 20s and 30s. But then came modernism. In the early 20th century in Europe, you have the beginnings of modernism. In art, the work of Cézanne and Picasso. In architecture, the international style, which rejects the Romantic era styles, and a generation of classicism, with form becoming more important than decoration, believing that form follows function. It comes to this country in the work of Frank Lloyd Wright, and here are two examples of his work. Uh, Probably most famous house is Falling Water near Pittsburgh, and his only major work in Philadelphia late in his career, Temple Beth Shalom in Elkins Park. And just look at the interior of this building. He said he and the rabbi worked together, but wanted it to be a representation of Mount Sinai. And so, but it's Mount Sinai filled with light. It's just a spectacular space. Um, and and look at the interior of Falling Water. This room is right here. So these people are standing on that, looking out over the waterfall uh, from this space, and it just glorious. How many of you have seen Falling Water? Oh yeah, oh my goodness. Okay, I need to tell you that. Okay, um, so the international style, first international style building in the city came in 1932 with the new Philadelphia Savings Fund Society building designed by Philadelphia architects George Howe and William Lescaze at the corner of 12th and Market Street. So here you see it in an early photograph of it. Here's 12th, here's Market, here's City Hall, here's Wanamaker's. But look at how the architects valued bold repetition and sleek glass, steel, and precast concrete as the preferred materials. And see how the elevator shaft is part of the design. It's not hidden the back stairs kind of thing. It's part of the design. It's how the building works. And notice the sleek glass and stone curving around the corner of 12th and Market. Uh, so it really was, this was a revolution in the city. Um, so the City Planning Commission finally uh, got to work, and in the 1930s uh, made a number of proposals which had to wait until after the Depression and World War II to be considered again. In the post war period, the middle class movement of white flight out of cities to new suburbs on new highways, starving the old urban hubs of revenue. And at the same time, crime rates skyrocketed, propelling further flight and new costs for beleaguered cities. This was the challenge that faced the reformed city government. And after all the string of mayors who really did nothing but line their own pockets for years, uh, there was a reform movement under um, Mayors Joseph Clark and Richardson Dillsworth that you see here. Uh, and it went into high gear with the appointment of young urban planner Edmund N. Bacon, a Philadelphia Quaker who returned to the city in 1947. He worked with architects Oscar Stoneroff and Louis Kahn as they took all the prior proposals and created a model of what the city would be like in 25 years if they were put into effect. And it was called the Better Philadelphia exhibit in 1947. And you could go and see it, and then if you had one particularly bad area, you could turn it over and see what the improvement was going to be. Um, and this was a big deal. Uh, uh, and when Bacon became director of the Planning Commission in 1949, he went to work to make them happen. A new city plan included them. So here we go. Um, City Hall. He wanted to follow Cray's idea of tearing it down, but the tower was determined, excuse me, of tearing down all but the tower, but it was determined to be too difficult and costly to do so, as you can imagine. And I think I said this in my last week that yes, that City Hall is the tallest masonry structure in the world. So imagine having to tear that down. So anyway, uh, so they they built a new municipal services building on the far side of, I guess, let's see, where's this? That's the tower. Kind of here. That's where we know what we have now. Excuse me. I should be in this picture. Uh, and so the municipal services building is over here. And, um, and then the Broad Street station was finally torn down, and new buildings and creating space for new modern office buildings called Penn Center, with an underground concourse between City Hall and Suburban Station connecting trains and subways. And so this gave rise to the concentration of office buildings on Market Street. So it goes on out from there. Uh, and Bacon also recognized the need to bring wealthier citizens back to the city. Redeveloping the historic area surrounding the newly created Independence National Historical Park would bring increased tax revenues and vitality to the city's civic and cultural life. So he revived the early name of Society Hill. And here's he got on the cover of Time magazine and that's a Franklin lamp in Society Hill that's behind him. Um, and this is so you remember from my plans I showed you before, this was the southern part of town that people began moving to in the 1740s across Dock Street. And so here's the same area of Society Hill now, well, in the redevelopment plan. In Washington, the first Urban Renewal Act was passed in 1949 and another in 1954. Then the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority was created, and in 1956 began to acquire derelict properties for resale at very low prices. Standards of restoration were established for facades of houses, not the interiors. Uh, Bacon also turned narrow alleyways into greenways, walkways, to allow people to walk through the interiors of blocks away from the street traffic and noise, bringing back William Penn's ideal of a green country town. In order to bring more people into the area faster than individual restorations would allow, multi unit contemporary house complexes were built. They had to get, the builders had to use colonial era scale and materials such as brick and ironwork. Apartment buildings were erected on the outer edges of the area, such as the Society Hill Towers by architect I.M. Pei, and that's you see them here, and they are here on the plan. So this is Dock Street coming down here to the Delaware River. So they're on the outer edge, and also Hopkinson House on Washington Square. Wait a minute. Let me just, which square am I looking at? Yeah, here. This is Washington Square with Hopkinson House on the edge of it. Um, or maybe it's here. I don't know. Anyway, um, and Bacon's colleague Oscar Stonerow was the architect for that building, which is they're both still there. So the first big project was the restoration of the Head House Market Shambles, as they're called, the oldest existing outdoor market building in the city, running from its entrance at Second and Pine Streets to Lombard Street. Originally, it went to South Street. The building at the head of the market shambles was called the Head House, and it had room for a fire engine right in there. And houses on either side of it were converted to shops and restaurants. I remember the first French restaurant that went in there. Oh, wonderful. Uh, and it's still going strong today with a market open every Sunday of the year. So here's a picture of the area from the Redevelopment Authority report they did. And so you can see how houses are not yet restored, but the towers have been built. Um, and so I have a few before and after pictures. Um, so let's see. Uh, if you look here, there are these two houses, the Abercrombie and Neve houses, which you see in this picture, all restored, right? And here is the Man Full of Trouble Tavern, and it got cut off this picture, so it's a double house here. So, but it was turned into a tavern, which was restored in the '60s, and then when the owners died, they left it to the University of Pennsylvania, which they never really used very much for visiting professors and such. And it kind of, sat empty for many years until just last year when somebody restored it again and opened it up as a tavern. So you can go there and have a colonial grog, and then upstairs in this space, he has a little museum. So I have not yet been there, but I want to get there because it's really um, supposedly wonderful. And then some other before and afters. So here's a walkway that Bacon created going from Pine Street. Well, it was Oriana Street, and you can see in the distance St. Peter's Church spire. So the Greenway starts there at St. Peter's, goes over Pine Street, over to Spruce, and then over to St. Joseph's Church, uh, and then into Independence Park. And so here it is turned into a walkway. Then 217 Spruce uh, was restored. This house is one of the first ones to be done by Jared and Agnes Ingersoll. And their next door neighbors were Henry and Anna Watts, and Mrs. Watts was Becky Sinkler's mother. So, and wonderful. And it was a neo-colonial house designed by architect George Roberts. So it's, a new house in the old style. And a gorgeous garden. Yes, yes. And I remember a a pillow she had on her sofa that said, "Old age is for sissies," something like that, or "Ain't for sissies." Old age ain't for sissies. That was it. Yes. Yep. 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 So, and then Bacon's Bacon knew that this was it was essential to allow new construction in the neighborhood. This was not going to be colonial Williamsburg, but an active community within the city. So you had the towers here, uh, but he built first a complex of houses around a central courtyard, so a big square, and notice how he uses brick and ironwork as in the neighborhood. Uh, and But then this row of windows across the top is the same proportion and material, precast concrete, as the windows in the towers. So it's a beautiful segue. I am pay. Yeah. hmm And he did the houses and then the tower. So it was like a gradual introduction to these very 30-story tall buildings. Um, and just across, so I took this picture the other day, and then I turned around and took this picture. So this is what's right straight across. And if those of you who were here for Philip Bennett's talk yesterday, I told about going to take this picture, and this door opened, and out came my friend that I hadn't seen in ages. So, um, anyway, but this is a house designed by Thomas U. Walter. Remember him from a couple of times ago, and in 1834, and it came with this beautiful balcony. There were three houses, and two of which remain, uh, and this balcony, gorgeous ironwork that is of Roman design, not manufacture, but design. So it is really a remarkable house. And there's a whole story behind getting the balcony, but I won't take time with that now. Um, and then here's a before and after of the Browns house, uh, built in 1816, 306 South Second Street. So this is a picture taken by the Redevelopment Authority uh, in 57. They went around and photographed everything so they could know what they're dealing with. And then we bought it in 65, and this picture is we haven't really started. We didn't start work for a while, but that's our house, and our neighbors had just started restoring theirs. This is me inside. It was a very cold January day, but I'm checking out the wonderful Valley Forge marble, and which are the fire mantelpieces all through the house. And this is what our front door looked like until we fixed it up, and it looked like this. So, uh, and in the back, it was 2 rooms deep, and then a back wing. So in the back wing was our kind of family room, and looking out on our garden. Uh, so that was fun. And then just around behind our house on the next little street, Phillip Street, was where Cynthia and Jim Eisman lived. And Cynthia and Jim, if you're watching, it's great to be doing this. So, uh, and they did not restore their house, but it had been restored before they moved in. But Cynthia got involved with a project in the neighborhood where several of the early pioneers, as we were called, gathered oral histories from people already living there when redevelopment came, and younger people restoring houses and their children. Cynthia then wrote them all up into a single manuscript about, I can't remember, 25 years ago. And along came a professor of historic preservation at Penn named Francesca Ammon, and she had her students. She wanted her students to create a website. There's sort of money for humanities projects in doing tech projects, and so they wanted to create this website, and they wanted to get interviews of people who lived there for a long time and restored their houses. Uh, and they learned that these oral histories had already been done. So Cynthia and I worked with her some on creating this website of Society Hill, and the oral histories included. This is a few of the people who were in it. And Sarah, do you recognize anybody there? That's Sarah's husband, Phil. And it was great. It was absolutely amazing. And I don't think I have time to open it up and show it to you, but it's pends.org, Society Hill. Just what did DS stand for? I can't remember. But anyway, you just click on a house, and up would come the oral history of it. It's really neat. Which? Oh, Sarah and Phil's. Yes, right. Oh, yeah. Yep, yep, absolutely. Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay. So that's kind of the Society Hill story. Now we move back to Market East, and how are we doing for time? I'm just going to kind of whiz through this because um, this is the redevelopment of the area between Market and between City Hall and 6th Street. Things were done. Convention Center was built. Uh, to the top of the Reading Terminal building was turned into a big gathering place for the market. Reading Terminal Market is still there, um, and had where it's been since 1893, when they tore up. They wanted to put trolley tracks down Walnut Market Street, so the market had to be moved. So they moved it inside, and that old ancient market of Philadelphia carries on in the Reading Terminal building. And uh, Ed Rendell became mayor and wanted to make improvements, um, and knew that the city had to and wanted to uh, promote the city as a tourist and convention destination, and created the Central Philadelphia Development Corporation. And uh, business owners would pay into a fund every year for the maintenance of the sidewalks and the directional signs, and having ambassadors tell people where to go, so on and so forth. It's been hugely successful. And then in 1982, big explosion of office building when Willard Rouse dared to defy the unwritten gentleman's agreement that no building would be built higher than William Penn's statue on City Hall. And he brought us Liberty Place at 16th and Chestnut Streets. Uh, and Ed Bacon was strongly opposed to it, but he was out of power by then, so it went through. So if you look in this picture, there's Liberty Place, and here's City Hall with William Penn on top. You can barely see it. But so, and that started this boom. And also, there was a 10-year tax abatement given to developers. So then you start having many more going out along Market Street like this. And the Comcast Tower, the two Comcast buildings, I guess were built, and then the second one is now, the highest building in the city. So take that, William Penn. But uh, um, and now I just to close, yeah, I think I could do this. I want to look at two Philadelphia architects with national and international reputations. The city's reputation for first class architecture has a long tradition, from Robert Smith to William Strickland, Frank Furness, and in the 20th century, Louis Kahn and Robert Venturi. Both of them were influenced by Paul Kray, whose influence as a professor at the Penn School of Design has affected several generations of city's architects ever since, notably the modernist architect Louis Kahn, who in turn influenced postmodernist Robert Venturi. So a look at them. Uh, um, so Estonian-born Kahn came to Philadelphia as a young man, studied under Paul Kray, then worked with George Howe on the PSFS building, then traveled to Europe. Perhaps the most important influence on him was seeing the medieval castles in Scotland and France, where he saw that one did not have to design a building based on its historic style, but rather it could do it on its function. Operating under the modernist credo that form follows function, in time he built important monumental and monolithic buildings all over the world. Above, you see the Richards Labs at Penn, uh, and it has what they call the servant spaces. So the vents, the elevators, the exhaust pipes are set in these brick towers, and they're separated from the served spaces, the laboratories and the office, which have glass. And so this is a modernist approach to the building. Um, and and then he did the Salk Institute, also labs, so using the same concept. This is in La Jolla, California. That's the Pacific Ocean out there, and it's just spectacular. Have any of you ever seen that? Yeah, I've never been there, but it must be fabulous. Yeah, and uh, so Kahn had a reverence for materials, light, and humanistic values, and an almost religious belief in elemental geometric solids, deriving monumentality, light, and form from ancient buildings and sites. And this shows up no place better than in this. The national capital in Dhaka, Bangladesh, which was completed in 1982. Look at it. What is it? it's a medieval castle, right? Towers, uh, moat, drawbridge, and this is a government building. You know what? They wanted to be able to pull up the drawbridge. I guess I don't know, uh, but there it is. You know, the geometric forms matching each other, and then this is the side of it. I guess it must. I don't know. Not sure. But look at that. I mean, look at those forms. So, and there's the plan of it. Kahn died of a heart attack in Penn Station in New York in 1974 and never saw this building completed, uh, which it must have been a labor of love. Uh, then Philadelphian Robert Venturi, in his early life, was a Quaker, went to Episcopal Academy, got his bachelor's and architectural degrees from Princeton, where he learned the principles of the Beaux-Arts style. He went on to work for modernist Eero Saarinen, then came back to Philadelphia and worked for Luke Kahn. He taught at the University of Pennsylvania, where he met fellow faculty member, architect, and planner Denise Scott Brown, and they began to collaborate and were married in 1967, with Denise soon joining the partnership with Venturi and John Rauch. And for much of the, so here you see him and his book, Contradiction, Complexity and Contradiction in Architecture. And I just want to finish this little text here. For much of the 20th century, modernist architects led by Le Corbusier and Ludwig Mies van der Rohe favored unadorned surfaces and strictly geometric forms. But in Venturi's treatise Complexity and Contradiction in Architecture, 1966, Venturi argued that ornament, historical allusions, and even humor had a place in modern architecture. The book was a retort to Mies's assertion that less is more. Less is a bore, Venturi wrote. I am for richness of meaning rather than clarity of meaning, he explained. His goal, he said, was to awaken architects from the prim dreams of pure order. His Guild House, a retirement home on Spring Garden Street, completed in 66, has a flat facade punctured by mismatched windows. Its central bay here uh, originally culminated in a gold and aluminum television antenna, which was removed in due course. But you see the scene and how the rooms are. It's sort of symmetrical, but it's then kind of and then it isn't. So he had fun doing that. Uh, Learning from Las Vegas, this book you see here, uh, started when, as a student project, when Venturi was teaching at Yale, to look at the built environment by documenting and analyzing the Las Vegas Strip. Their book, Learning from Las Vegas, oh, darn, I was going to bring that with me. Rats. Sorry. Maybe I'll get it in the library. Um, has been called a stinging rebuke to orthodox modernism and elite architectural tastes. So here you see Bob and Denise, and they're Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, and here's Denise in Las Vegas, uh, and this is from the book. So, and then the next thing he wanted to do was uh, to emphasize the communicative function of architecture through signs and symbols. So, you want an ice cream cone? You go to a milk bottle to get it, and that's what this is. You want you live in Long Island and you want to get some duck for dinner? You go to the duck store, and it's in the form of a duck. There's the front door. Or you have a decorated shed, which this is the Institute of Scientific Information in West Philadelphia, which the computer was invented at Penn, right? And so here's a computer punch card is the facade of this building. So that's his decorated shed. And then finally, uh, some of his late works are here. The Sainsbury wing of the National Gallery in London is here. This is the little corner here is the National Gallery, so it's right up next to it, and it's sort of references to classical architecture. um, but it's very modernist. So there's these big glass windows along the side. That's this in this interior shot. Uh, with this, which is where the lunchroom is, up sitting up in there, looking out over the lobby of the building, and the galleries. Many of them look like this. It's just spectacular experience walking through time, through the Renaissance art, and it's just fabulous. And then a very late project, 2008, was a chapel for Episcopal Academy, their new campus in Newtown Square. And in looking at it, I'm reminded of the Beth Shalom, uh, the same sense of rising up to the sky and a space filled with gorgeous light. And it is a beautiful space. Um, So the team Venturi and Scott Brown went on to receive the American Institute of Architects 2016 Gold Medal. They're the organization's highest honor, and the first time a woman had been awarded in her lifetime. Uh, Bob Venturi died in 2015, and Denise Scott Brown is still living in Germantown. Um, our art historian Stanislas von Moos wrote about them, and the built work of the firm Venturi, Scott Brown and Associates of Philadelphia has had an equally great impact through a commitment to a creative understanding of history and the everyday environment, to the use of visual references in the design of buildings. This firm has changed the face of modern architecture. And here is an amazing juxtaposition. Do any of you know this? Have you seen this? Yeah. So in Chestnut Hill, uh, Millman Street goes along here and to Gravers Lane, which goes along towards Germantown Avenue. So as you come off of Gravers Lane onto Millman, here's the Vanaventuri house. So built for Bonaventure's mother. Uh, and it has references to classical and Mannerist architecture in its monumental facades, broken pediment, right? So here's a pediment, right? Bing, 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 top of the building. Yeah, there's a hole in it. Uh, and applied ornament, this sort of this doodah thing going across, and an international style modernism with this row of windows, and uh, and then 18th century shingle style American architecture, 19th century shingle style, uh, with its pitched roof, uh, succinctly illustrated his ideas about formal complexity and contradiction. In his influential critique of modernism, Venturi was at the forefront of postmodernism. So he isn't a modernist; he's a postmodernist. And you just looking at the floor plan, it's a little zoopy doopy doopy doo around, and the staircase. Going up the stairs once. It's like you go up and then and then you stop and there's a whole another little room in here, and then I don't know. It's just really wacky. But then this big beautiful space looking out into the woods behind the house. So um, anyway, it's there, and then just you walk out the front door, you cross Millman Street, you walk about 100 paces down, and here is a house designed by Louis Kahn for Margaret Esherick in 1961. And it is a glass box set in the woods, and it is simple and pure and filled with light, and it's just a gem of a building. So they're right by each other, and they knew each other well. So it was a wonderful thing to have them together. And each house captures in its small space the epitome of its designer's style and approach to life. So we come back full circle from the founding and building of Philadelphia is started by William Penn, the 300th anniversary of his arrival on the ship Welcome in 1682, to Welcome Park, the commemoration of Penn's issuing his Charter of Privileges on the site of the slate roof house. The Friends of Independence National Historical Park commissioned Robert Venturi to design it. And so here you see it. I know you saw this in first lecture, but just to remind you, uh, the Welcome Park, of course, comes from the name of Penn's ship, the Welcome. And then there's this whole wall of interpreting William Penn that Venturi came up with, and after consulting with a lot of scholars, and um, and then the whole city, the grid plan laid out with William Penn at the center. And here are two drawings he did for me of the slate roof house uh, recreation here on the grid, and then the center thing with William Penn. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this race through 344 years of the growth of this city through both hard times and prosperity. Next week, we'll look at the countryside around Penstown and the creativity, the creation and vitality of Fairmount Park. Thank you very much. 5 minutes.
We do have time for a question or two.
I'm trying to remember that when I came to Philadelphia in 54 or so, the Market Street line was elevated right across the center of town. Is that true, or some impact?
No, I don't think so. No. The Reading Railroad came in.
I was just a kid, so I don't remember.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, I think it would be that. Yeah. Yeah.
When Haussmann created these broad streets in Paris, a lot of houses were destroyed and people were displaced. And what happened here in Philadelphia? How much was it already built up that people were displaced, and how were they compensated?
I think I don't know specifically, but I know probably the most demolition was in the creation of the Parkway, because Center City was pretty well built up by the time Bacon came along and transformed things. And in Society Hill, there was a lot of controversy in Society Hill over buildings being torn down that were old. And remember Charles Peterson, I told you about, who was the architectural historian or historical architect for Independence Hall. He had purchased some houses built by Stephen Girard, and he was he and Bacon would go at, cross swords over buildings that should be kept, and Bacon wanted to create one of his crazy greenways. I mean, it was a constant battle between them. But there weren't too many that had any that were viable to be restored. Some of them were just in terrible condition. So there was nothing you could do but rebuild them or rebuild something else. So yeah, Jim.
Looking at the IMP work, Society Hill Towers were completed in 1965. And I returned to Philadelphia after an internship in Ohio.
64, Jim.
64?
Yeah, that's when we moved in.
Okay.
We weren't finished yet, quite.
Well, it wasn't filled in summer of 1965.
Right, definitely.
And coming out of internship at $300 a month, I was starting my residency in psychiatry and was getting $600 a month. So I could afford a studio apartment. And I had a studio apartment in the South Tower at Society Hill Towers.
Oh, I'll be darned.
And at the time, the townhouses, which were in the square, they were very slow to be sold. They were asking prices of $45,000 at the time.
Yep.
And couldn't sell them very much. Now, Society Hill was still pretty much a mess. That was a few years before your restoration. And I noticed the difference in the earlier 60s. I lived in the 900 block of Clinton Street, which was just west of Pennsylvania Hospital. And that area was nice at the time. Mm-hmm. It wasn't beat up, but a lot of the houses down lower in the numbers were abandoned. And
well, you'd had the whole Dock Street market. When they took the market off of Market Street, they created a produce market, wholesale produce market on Dock Street. And it was getting rid of that allowed the restoration, the redevelopment Society Hill to go forward. So all those areas around the market were, the worst affected. Our house had been an all-night kosher restaurant before we bought it, and so the whole ground floor had to be, there was nothing there. Well, a little
Now,
bit,
as I remember, Dilworth had his house on Washington Square.
right?
So that
But
was
it was
in pretty
new.
good shape.
It was new. That was a new house. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sarah. Yeah.
Hi. I just wanted to talk about I'm just trying to tell you about a little bit about the demolition or removal of the buildings in order to build the parkway. My husband's grandfather was in, I can't exactly tell you what office he filled, but he was somehow in charge of the clearing of the buildings in order to build the parkway. And according to my husband, who got the story from his grandfather, over the course of the building of the parkway, they removed 1,300 buildings. And he would come home each night and tell his wife that, oh, we did well today. We got 4 more buildings, or we had a really good luck today. We got the rights to 10 more buildings. So it went on for quite a while, and for some reason he was able to report how many buildings each day to his wife at home, and eventually to the city as a whole. I just think sometimes it's fun. These details are sort of fun.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Sarah. That's great. Wow.
One last one.
This is just a comment. Whoops. This is odd. The medical building that Louis Kahn created at Penn was almost unanimously disliked.
Oh, really? Yeah.
It was the rooms somehow were made very awkward and small and not very usable for doing medical research.
Thank you. Yeah.
I could say something. I lived in a building with Louis Kahn at Bryn Mawr, the Erdman dorm he built, and I was one of
yes.
the class that got to put our opinions in before it was final. So we got all window seats. That was one of the.
Oh, yeah, great. There's one more over here. Kathleen, Sweetie wants.
Okay, this is going to be the last one.
And also in the research building, the west sun was so strong that they finally just took pieces of paper and
Covered the windows.
up the windows.
Form follows
Yeah.
function.
Yeah, right. And the sun
I
does
think-
too. Great.
So his buildings were beautiful to look,
Mhm, mhm.
but the function was in a lot of places
Yeah, yeah.
was lacking.
Mhm, right. Yeah.
But we should be able to put up with that because the designs are so good.
So thank you, Libby. We look forward to next week.
See you next week.